Hi, my name is Skylar Boshin, and today's video is going to be about my college rape story. So this story I have shared on many platforms through news outlets and more. You can look at my website, skylarboshin.com, where I have a lot of the different media interviews and more that I have done on my website through the link advocacy. Last year I made a video about how I went from a rape victim to an advocate for sexual assault survivors. Today I'm going to be talking more about my victimization in college and more about the details of what happened, and then also how I overcame that and where I am today. In January of 2020, I was a freshman at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and I was very excited for my freshman year. I had a great first semester. While there were ups and downs, of course, it was very much a positive experience. My second semester of freshman year, I met this boy who is friends with a lot of my friends and then was also very popular among the people in my dorm where I lived. I lived on the 4th floor, he lived on the 3rd floor, and we began to message through Snapchat occasionally, and he one time in the elevator brought my groceries up because I was dropping them and brought them into my dorm room for me. He was simply an acquaintance. We weren't friends, but we had a lot of common friends. So that is how I met my perpetrator. And one night I was holding a dorm party and had a bunch of people that lived in the dorms over to my dorm room. We were having drinks, and at one point in the night I blacked out. I had never blacked out before. I didn't know what that was, but I drank too much. I was pressured into taking a lot of syringe shots, which one syringe shot included 3 shots of vodka. And I was not an experienced drinker and was only 17 years old at this time. I graduated high school a year early, so I was a young freshman. And then woke up the next morning with a splitting headache, laying in my roommate's bed, who had just moved out, naked, and realized that a man's arm was wrapped around me. Had no memory of what happened. Clearly, if you don't have a memory of a sexual encounter, that is sexual assault, because you cannot consent if you are blacked out. That is just a fact. I tried my best to get him out of my dorm room in the safest way I could, which took a lot of convincing. Once he left my dorm room, I was so out of it, was still intoxicated, and had work. And I decided that I had to go to work, so I left and went to work. I was in a haze, wasn't sure what was going on, was very overwhelmed, was traumatized, obviously, and I did my job, probably extremely poorly that day, but I was a gymnastics coach at this time and was working at a small recreational gym. And after I got off work, I drove straight to my parents' house and took a nap, and they could very much tell that I was not myself, that something was wrong. Asked me, I said nothing, just that I was tired, that I had had a long night. went back to my dorm room after my nap, and got up to my dorm room and immediately called one of my best friends at the time, who had slept over that night and actually witnessed the rape, and unfortunately did not do anything about it because she too was intoxicated. She came over, we discussed what happened. I invited more friends over, talked to them about what happened, tried to figure out what I should do. Called my brother, told my brother what happened, and then was able to get his support, which was good, and decided that night I just wanted to forget about what happened and didn't want to deal with it yet because I was still so traumatized, and decided to just have a drinking night with my friends to just try to forget and try to numb the pain of what I had just gone through. And at this point, I was ignoring all messages from my rapist and was not responding to him whatsoever. He had messaged me countless times, and during this get-together with my friends, my close friends at the time, we heard a knock on the door, and one of my friends looked through the peephole. It was in fact my perpetrator. And one of my friends at the time called her boyfriend, had him come to the door to tell my perpetrator to leave, that I didn't want to talk to him. My perpetrator did not listen. One of my friends that was in my room walked out, closed the door behind him, and told my perpetrator that he needed to leave, that I did not want to speak to him, got him to finally leave, and then I was able to just try to relax as much as I could with my friends at the time. And the next day, I went to my parents' house with my best friend at the time and told them what happened. Then went to get a SANE exam, a sexual assault nursing examination, which was 3 hours of swabs and retelling my story and having a vaginal exam. It was re-traumatizing, but I felt it was necessary if I ever wanted to get any sort of justice for what happened to me. After my SANE exam, I reported my rape to the Title IX office at UMKC, and that's when everything shifted and I began to get victim blamed, and a lot of people on the campus, including a lot of my friends, turned against me because I had turned in my perpetrator. I experienced a lot of harassment and victim blaming and bullying in the dorms after reporting to the Title IX office. I lost almost all of my friends who were not true friends, clearly, and it was a very difficult time in my life. But then COVID happened, and all of us were forced to move out of the dorms, which was a blessing in disguise for me at the time. Obviously, COVID was a horrible pandemic that happened, but I was able to move home and heal with my family. And during that time, when everyone was in lockdown, I was at home and was able to get counseling online, and the Title IX case was resolved months and months later, and my perpetrator was suspended from the university, but not expelled. And he was suspended for 1.5 years. Luckily, he did not return to the campus, but I then began protesting on the campus and began to use my voice as an advocate. But my college rape shifted and changed my entire college experience. I went from being a victim of childhood sexual abuse and then being a victim of sextortion, having that court case resolved, going into my college experience feeling like I could change my story, that I could be normal, quote unquote, and then experienced that victimization, and I felt like my entire world had shattered. It was one of the hardest things that I have had to deal with in my life. I later had flashbacks and started to regain these memories. I pushed back because of how traumatizing it was, as well as being blacked out at the time. And these memories came back through EMDR therapy, which I've made a video on that. I will put the link on this video so that you can watch that if you are interested in that type of therapy. It stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing therapy. I then went forward to the police, I would say a year later, and that police investigation began, and I was not able to get justice due to insufficient evidence, which is extremely common. There was quite a bit of evidence. I had a rape kit done where trauma was found, as well as giving them all of my clothing and the bed sheets from that night. I also had text exchanges, and my perpetrator had confessed to me, but that was still not enough in the eyes of the criminal justice system. And that is so common. I know so many survivors of rape and sexual assault who have gone forward trying to get justice and have received a letter saying that there's insufficient evidence and that the case cannot go forward. And it's such a heartbreaking experience. I remember when I got my letter from the prosecutor's office, and I was absolutely devastated. Because at the time I was still getting bullied and harassed online as well, because my story had become public, and I began to share my story. And I decided to share my story because my story was public at this point. So everyone knew that I had been assaulted, or most people knew what happened, but they only knew what happened from the rumors and everything that were on campus. And I wanted people to know my story. I wanted people to hear from me. And that's ultimately what caused me to come forward and start speaking up about what I experienced, as well as to talk about how detrimental the victim blaming was. I'm going to be doing a sexual assault survivor Q&A. And so I would love for everyone who views this video to leave any comments, questions below. And I will be answering all of those questions in another video that will come out next week. And I am very open about my story. I answer questions when I speak at high schools and colleges, so I've received many, and no question is wrong or too much, so feel free to ask whatever it is you are curious about. My college rape happened January 25th of 2020, and that was 4 years ago now, which is crazy to think about. But I was 17 at the time. I'm 22, and I have grown so much as a person despite what I've gone through, not because of what I went through. And I want everyone who's watching this to know, if you're a survivor, that you can get through this, that while it is a truly horrible thing to experience, you are strong, and there are so many resources out there for you to access. My website is skylarmotion.com, where I post newsletters every month, and I also put a lot of information, resources, advocacy on my website that you can look at that can be very helpful. I'm sorry if you have experienced a similar situation, because I know how detrimental it can be to your mental health and how devastating it is to your life and how it will affect you forever. But you're a survivor, and you will make it through this. And thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you. And stay tuned for the Survivor Q&A next week. Thank you so much. Bye.